Hey everybody, it's Jim from Sprague Woodturning. Welcome to this week's video. This week we are going to combine a long leaf pine cone with some periwinkle tinted resin from Designer Epoxy to make this very unique looking hollow form. Now, when I first got these pine cones, what I did was I threw them in the oven for 2 hours at 250. So of course that will kill any critters that might be in these pine cones. But the other thing too is I wanted to bring all the sap out of the pine cone petals, as much of it as I could anyway. And so that's what I'm doing. It kind of solidified on the tips of these on the tips of this cone. So I'm just grinding that off and getting it ready for casting. There you go, cleaned up pretty good.
All right, so what do you think of that? Pretty cool, eh? Man, these things are sharp. So, ideally, I would wrap this with plastic to try and limit how much resin we're going to use here, but there's no way that this is going to survive, or the plastic's going to survive this. It's really, really sharp. So, by the way, these come from David. David Hard, I think is his name. I sent along a sticker, Far West Workshop, and a nice postcard as well from Lake Isabella. That's apparently where these come from. These are long leaf pine cones, and he sent 6 of these to me. So thank you so much, David. I really, really appreciate it. Totally awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do, because I'm not confident in using plastic, this is actually from Designer Epoxy. It's one of the empty containers, 1 gallon container. And this fits in there pretty nicely. So there, let's get some resin mixed up.
So we are back again with Designer Epoxy's deep casting epoxy. Believe it or not, this pine cone took 3 liters of resin. I might have been able to get away with using a little bit less if I had maybe used the very top part of that jug where it's tapered and then pushed it down over the pine cone. But I don't think that it really truly mattered that much. And then you're worried about leaks and there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. So anyway, the deep casting epoxy is certainly epoxy you want to use here. As far as the pine cone is concerned, when I put it in the little container, it wasn't sitting perfectly straight up and down, so that's why I taped it like that. And the tape also helped it from floating when the resin was put in. The other reason why I wanted the center of the cone right in the center of the casting is because that's where we were going to go in to do the hollow form.
All right, so the plan here is to draw a vacuum on this for an hour or an hour and a half, and then I'm actually going to cast this on the bench. I'm not going to put it in the pressure pot. That's one of the reasons why I'm using the vacuum chamber. And I'll top up the level of resin that you see here, but I guarantee you we're going to see lots of air coming out of here. So anyway, an hour and a half later, I'll put it on the bench and that'll be it. So let's see how much air we can get out of this.
So as you see me apply and release the vacuum here, you'll see the kind of the resin level go up and down, up and down. And technically, the longer you do this, the less bubbles you should be getting because, of course, the pine cone is submerged in the resin. So as you draw the vacuum, you kind of collapse the cell structure or the air. You draw it out of the petals, and then when you release it, because it creates a vacuum in there, it draws the resin in. So that's the whole principle of stabilizing and putting things in the vacuum chamber. While I was at it, I knew that I was going to have to top this up when we were done. So I put the resin that I mixed up in with the casting. That way it would be free of air when it came time to pour it in to top up the casting. And again, I'm just amazed at the air that comes out of these pieces. Even the resin itself. When you use a mechanical mixer, like I typically do a lot of times, it will introduce a lot of air. So, it's to your benefit to get a vacuum chamber to try and draw out all that air prior to doing any casting. Not so much an issue here with deep cast because there's really, really long open time. So it will allow those bubbles to escape before the resin solidifies or cures.
So all right, that's holding at 25 inches of vacuum. It's been probably 15 minutes, so I'll let it sit for another, probably a little more than an hour. And then that'll be it. We'll put it on the bench, and I'll bring you in when I'm topping this up, because I figured it was a good idea to degas this, because I'm just going to pour it on there, and hopefully that'll eliminate any bubbles that we're going to have. You can see tons and tons of air coming out of that. All right, see you in a little bit. All right, that's been an hour and a half. I think that is more than good enough. All right, so that's it. It's just going to sit here for the next 3 days, 72 hours. I'm actually really liking that periwinkle color. Anyway, we'll see you in 3 days.
So as you can see, we've got the piece mounted between centers. It is 3 days later. I have no idea where the footage went for this thing. I don't know if it was corrupted. I know for sure it was recorded, but when I went to do my editing, it was missing. So you didn't really miss a whole lot, just mounting it between centers and it's just cleaning off the outside of it and making it round. So at this stage, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do here. I do kind of have an idea in my head as to what I want this thing to look like. But because pine cones, well, they're not truly symmetrical. So this piece ended up being a little not as wide as I had hoped it would be, or bulbous, if you will. So I had to keep cutting down the resin till I could expose petals all the way around, where it looked more uniform. And there you can see cracks. So this pour was, I think, almost 7 inches deep. So that's deep cast is not designed for that. So, again, pushing it past its limits. There have been a couple of people that have suggested putting the casting in the fridge after it's been casted. And, you know, as a relatively new resin caster, I mean, I've only been at this about a year and a half. I think I'm going to try that next time. If I can pour larger volumes of resin and not have it crack, because I can put it in the fridge, and that will maybe slow that curing process down. The hopefully will limit how much thermal cracking that we do get. So I should mention that we are using the Hercules here from Hunter Tool Systems. And, we're going to have to deal with thermal cracking again this week. Like I said, like I'm still learning. So, I really looking forward to this whole process. So I'm just going to keep working away at this and hoping that we can expose those petals so they look more even all the way around the piece. And to be quite honest with you, I was quite surprised at how extensive the cracking actually was. I didn't think it was that bad when I initially looked at the very top. Ironically, there was no thermal cracking on the bottom of this piece, where in the past, any of these really deep pours that I have done that thermal cracked, it pretty much went through the piece. So I don't know if that's because of the pine cone or what the situation is there. So if you've got any ideas as to why the thermal cracking didn't go all the way through that, I certainly would love to hear it, since YouTube is full of a lot of smart people. The one thing that I really like about the Hercules is that you can just like back and forth, back and forth. You've got really good control with this tool, and I really, really love this tool. All I'm doing here is just trying to define the area that we're going to be putting the foot, and this is the Typhoon bit. This is what I'm going to use this time, and what I'm going to do is groove this out, and it'll be interesting to hear people's thoughts on this. So that's a pretty wide bit. I do have a smaller bit that you'll see me use here where it just goes on the very ends where I kind of thin it out so it looks like a more natural crack. And I'm wondering if maybe I should have stuck just with that and not this really super wide typhoon bit. The other thing that was important to me was any of the cracks that went up near the very top of the vase where we're going to go in for the opening. I wanted to make sure that those cracks went all the way to that opening so that you would see the resin at the very top, like right where I was at just there and there. That way I think that it'll look more natural, if you will. The other thing too is I wanted to make sure that I was deep enough into the form. There's that other bit. I wanted to make sure that I was deep enough into the form so that when it was thinned out, or when it was hollowed out, sorry, that you would see the corresponding color completely through it. So I didn't show it, but I actually did turn a tenon on one end. So that's what I'm grabbing here with the chuck. And just want to clean off the very bottom here, get it ready for a glue block. You see me put on there. So, for the new people, since it's crazy. I'm getting between 200 to 300 subscribers a day. So there's a lot of new people. If you're not familiar with my mounting methods, fixing stuff to the lathe, I like to use these hot melt glue blocks to put it on the piece, and then that way you can put multiple coats of finish on, and you actually don't have to handle the work. So that's why I do that. The other thing too is if you put a glue block on the bottom of a piece, instead of robbing size from the piece to turn a tenon, if you glue a tenon essentially on the bottom of a vase, you're actually saving, that half inch of height that you would lose if you had to put a tenon on the actual piece. Since we have a lot of little voids to fill, I figured that I would use the 6 mil poly vapor barrier that we use here in Canada. Well, I suppose it's used in other parts of the world. And of course, another favorite of mine is duct tape. So in order to make sure that we don't have any leaks, I wanted to make sure that this had a lot of duct tape on it. And it was successful, so it didn't leak, so that's great. The other thing I wanted to do was at the very top, I wanted to close this up a bit so that we're not using so much resin. So that's kind of why you see me use the hot melt glue there, and you'll see me tape it eventually as well. Um, yeah, so I mean, this is a very effective method I've used many times. Sometimes you get leaks with it, but not too often. We're going to be using the Pro Series this time from Designer Epoxy. And along with this, I wanted to use Pearl Gold last time. And, talking to my wife, she's like, nah, I think that the white would work better. But, this week we're going to go with the gold.
All right, so I don't know if this is going to be enough or not. It's a little over 6 ounces. I'm going to try and pour it in this little hole. Wish me luck. Anyway, once we get this in and filled to the top, we are going to put this in the vacuum chamber and then the pressure pot. All right, that might be enough. We'll have to see. Let's get it in the vacuum chamber. There, I think there's lots there. Hardly any air coming out of that. So I cycled it on and off about 4 times. release the vacuum, and I mean, there's hardly any bubbles. So I guess the first time that we did this, it really was quite effective. All right, so this will be going to the pressure pot, and then we'll see you guys in there tomorrow. All right, so it's the next day. We are out of the pressure pot, and we didn't have any leaks, and I believe everything has been filled. Can't wait to trim this back and see what we're dealing with. Okay, so before we move forward here, I just want to show something for the people that want to try this method. So here's the glue block, right? Hot melt glue, and the very top part of the jaw is resting against the form that you're turning. If it is not, what can happen is this piece can vibrate, especially the further you get off the edge of the chuck here. Out here it's going to be a lot of vibration. So essentially by placing the top of the jaws on the bottom of the form, it will help negate that. So make sure that your tenons are short enough that the top of the jaws will rest on the piece that you're turning.
And to elaborate a little bit more on that, so if you put a waste block on the bottom of a bowl, and it's important that when you put that glue block on the bottom of the bowl, that you really try and get it as tight to the bottom surface of the bowl that you can. Of course, hot melt glue is flexible. So if it isn't pushed up really tight against the bottom of the bowl or the form like this, then you're going to have issues. It's going to vibrate and move around. So essentially, you're looking for that wood to wood contact with a very small amount of hot melt glue between the two of them, binding them together. And there's really our first real look at this, and I'm like, wow, like when this thing is polished, it is going to look fantastic. Um, the pine cone petals are denser at the base than they are near the top. I think that's pretty much all pine cones are very similar in that regard. And immediately as soon as I shut that off and I looked at it and I seen that gold resin in there, I'm like, yeah, that was the right call. While I certainly don't mind the look of the other vase that we had the cracks in the windows, if you will, I think that it probably would have benefited better from being grooved out so that there was a thicker um, line in there and not white. White was taking on too much of the color from the surrounding piece, and it's a neat effect, don't get me wrong, but this is really kind of the look and the effect that I was going for. All right, so moving on to boring here. I think I started with like a 7/8 inch drill bit, and I think I went to 1 1/16. That's the one that you see there. And of course, that isn't large enough to get the Jacobs chuck all the way down into the base. So I have an extension that I use when I'm doing my pepper mills, and there it is there. And that allowed me to get all the way down to the base that as far as I wanted to anyway. And then that way we can move it outboard and I can do some freehand hollowing with the DUA Tools hollower.
So there's been a number of people asking about the extension that I use for sanding these deep hollow forms. I got this one from Princess Auto on the weekend. So I don't know if you can see the stock number there. There's the stock number. If you want to get one, I imagine you can order one online. But the good thing about it is a lot of times I don't need the full length of this, so now I've got this short one, and it should be very similar to the one that I already have. So Princess Auto here in Canada. All right, so we are outboard, and this is the DUA Tools Hollower. And this is the left-handed version. We are outboard, and of course I'm left-handed. That's why I'm using this outboard, and my lathe has left-hand threads on the outboard end. There certainly is right-handed options for this. It does come with what's called ticklers. We'll get to those eventually. They go in here, and really been wanting to use this tool, and I think that this hopefully is going to be an option for us here. I am having some issues with both wrists. I believe it's arthritis. So we're going to have to see how this goes. We may have to go inboard and use the captive system, but I was really wanted to use this tool. And one of the issues is that I'm only 5'6". So I mean, I've got a couple of pieces of wood I'm standing on to get high enough where it's comfortable for me to use. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. But like I said, I don't know how my wrists are going to hold up to this. So this is the long, robust tool rest that I bought. And one of the reasons is for a tool such as this that, you know, you don't have to worry about this falling off the edge of this. So of course it's pinned against here. So this takes all the rotational force and hopefully it removes it from your body. So that's why I got a longer tool rest as well to help with these kinds of situations. All right, let's see how this goes.
So once you're tall enough to use this tool, it actually works quite nice. This hollow form presented some challenges. Like I said, I wanted to leave the hole small enough, or smaller on the small side. There is no sanding on the inside of this this week. It's just the opening's just too small. And this is probably the first time that we've used an opening in a hollow form that is this small. But you know, the upper part of this vase was a breeze. No problems at all. Once I get down near the base, and of course you're fighting gravity here, so the more tool overhang you have off of the tool rest, then yeah, of course it's going to be you're going to get some more chatter, and maybe it's going to be a little more grabbier than you wish. But you know, it was just I was really concerned about losing it. So, you know, eventually I have to abandon the idea and go back to the captive system. But you know, I really like the concept of this tool, and we certainly will be using a lot more of this in the future. That piece of tape that I put on there, that was just to make sure that I didn't go through the very bottom of this. I wasn't totally set on the bottom part of this hollow form. I thought maybe I might alter it a little bit. In the end, I left it. So, but I just really was a little worried about um, really blowing the piece up. So this is a very neat idea. I really like this idea. That's just a spring and it just runs on the outside of the form, and that gives you your proper wall thickness. You just set it wherever you want. It's totally adjustable in and out. And I really like the concept of that tool. As you can see, I've left it quite thick, and the cutter is adjustable. You can turn it any way you want. I did sharpen once during this, but I just had to abandon it because I was just really worried about it blowing up and eating some resin and pine cone, which I'm assuming isn't all that tasty.
All right, so I don't know what the deal is. I'm just getting massive vibrations down here. I'm gonna assume that it's got something to do with the resin. So, in the upper part of this form, no problem. But the further this goes off the tool rest here, it's just really, really super grabby. Um, I'm going to assume that it's got the fact that it's resin and it's this pine cone, and so I think what I'm going to do is just switch this to the inboard and use my captive system to finish this off, and then we can get our first coat of finish on this. We will definitely be using this more in the future. I really like this tickler idea. To set your wall thickness, I think it's a very, very smart idea. I don't know, I'm just worried about this thing exploding. All right, let's get the one-way system set up. All right, we're all set up for hollowing again. I've got my laser set up. It's probably about 3/8 of an inch is what I've got it set at. This is basically the same shape as the other bar we're using with DUA tools. And this is the captive system. If you haven't been here before, this is pretty much my go-to system for hollowing. All right, so anyway, we'll see the laser dropping off here as it gets to the wall thickness that I've got it set at. The other thing you'll notice, I'm not using the steady rest. Let's hope that's not a mistake.
So going back to the D-Way hollower, I didn't realize it at the time, but the cutting edge the point wasn't pointing towards the tickler. So that in a sense was there was a lot of the cutting edge hitting the hollow form at once. And this is probably one of the main reasons why it was so grabby near the base of this form. So if you have one of these tools, I certainly would like to hear your thoughts on that. Um, Again, I think it's a fantastic tool, and we certainly will see more in the future. But at the time, it just never dawned on me. But looking at that last clip, I was like, yeah, look at that. There's that big long cutter. So that's contacting the wood all at once, and it's probably going to make it a lot more grabbier than if it was just the point contacting the wood. Anyway, your thoughts would be appreciated.
All right, so I thought I would just show this to you. So this is the top that goes on my laser. This is the battery compartment, and that's the piece that you screw on for it. Well, it vibrated loose and hit the floor and just was gone. So for the last 15 minutes, I've been looking for it. So that's a good reminder to make sure that you check all of these screws and all the pieces on this hollowing rig, because when something like that hits the floor, because it's brass, it's non-magnetic, and then you're cursing a lot looking for it. And of course, it went underneath the planer, which is about 800 pounds. All right, back to hollowing.
So yeah, magnetic tools are not really all that great at picking up things that aren't magnetic. So I have a couple of good strong magnets in my shop, and if you are if you're looking at getting into this, make sure you invest in a couple of really strong floor magnets. Uh, as wood turners, we've always got stuff all over the floor, shavings, and if something hits those shavings, well, good luck to you. So what I'm doing here is I've got this mounted outboard again, so it's just a little bit out of true. So I'm just going to true this up a little bit, and then we'll be able to get on with sanding. This thing was inboard and outboard a fair bit, and to show you, basically how true the bottom is in that tenon, there really wasn't much difference in the movement in the piece from inboard to outboard, and I had to change chucks, so that's why it's not the same chuck because the outboard threads are actually smaller than the inboard threads on my 20-inch General. So these are the 3.5-inch dimple discs from sandpaper.ca, and because of those dimples on the end, when you use the air sander, it will almost kind of straighten those up. So that way you can go right down next to the face of the chuck jaws, and it won't really affect your overall design. Last step is to buff with triple E buffing compound before our first coat of finish goes on, just like I always do. Very, very pretty. Very, very happy with this piece. The resin, how it flows around the petals is really cool. So actually, this is the last step, and this is the denatured alcohol.
All right, so what I've got here is some Pro Series, 3 ounces of it. So what I'm going to do is dump this all down inside of this hollow form. And this is going to do a couple of things. It will seal everything up inside, and it will also seal any cracks that may have been on the inside of this that we really can't see. And then what I'll do is put it upside down in this for 15 minutes, clean it all off with denatured alcohol, and then put our first coat of finish on. There, we'll just give that 15 minutes, and then we'll do our first coat of finish.
Had a little bit of resin spillage on the very face of this, so I made sure to clean it off with denatured alcohol.
All right, this week we are going to come back with the Waterlux Original VOC Medium Sheen. Well, well, sir, what do you think of that? That resin is crazy good. Oh, I love how the opening, how this crack goes into the opening with the gold resin down inside. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's certainly not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but wow. That huge pine cone petals is just spectacular too. I don't know, one coat might do it. We'll probably put 2 on just to be safe, but wow, is it ever nice. This resin right here with that pearl, crazy. All right, see you tomorrow.
So I decided to put a second coat on, and before that goes on, of course, we use the triple E buffing compound and then clean it with the denatured alcohol, like we always do with all of these resin pieces.
Well, good morning. This is the second and last coat of Waterlux. Well, there you go. It probably really didn't need the second coat, but some of the petals probably could have done with another coat finish, so that's why I did it. I'm just really, really pleased with this piece. All right, we'll see you tomorrow when we're doing the bottom.
So for the bottom, what I did was I found center on the glue block, and that was a piece of pine that's mounted in the chuck, so it's quite soft. And then I just put a couple pieces of router matting, and that way it would protect the opening of the vase. And I took the majority of it off here. Again, I went with the gouge. The main reason for that is because of the hot melt glue. I do find that if you use any of the carbide cutters from Hunter Tools, that they tend to clog up with the hot melt glue. So that's why I just stuck with the gouge to finish this piece off. So once this was done, I flipped it over and used my vacuum chuck, which you'll see here in a moment, to just take that little remaining nub off and do the sanding on the very base. Took a little bit of fooling around to get this thing so it would run true as well. And again, if you're inboard, then you can line that up with your tailstock, and then that way you're not, kind of messing around with it like I am there. Eventually I get it. Sometimes, you put it on, you get it the first time. Sometimes it takes you about a dozen times or longer before you get it really trued up. So I am taking very, very light cuts here. Um, the further you come off of that vacuum chuck, the less, the more mechanical advantage you have, and you can rip it free. So very light cuts, and it actually worked quite well, but you got to be really, really careful. And then I sanded this piece from 180 to 800, and I did not buff the bottom because I found if you're writing on the bottom, it's best not to buff it. You can put your signature on better. And there you go. Let's finish this up.
All right, let's have a last look at this beautiful little hull form. Periwinkle purple, gold pearl, and deep cast from Designer Epoxy, and of course long leaf pine cone from David. Thank you again for that. 5 more of those to go. There's the very bottom, and I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick that up, but all the details are there on the bottom. I do get asked a lot about the pen that I sign with. It is a Pilot V5, and there's an Amazon link in the description down below if you want to get one. Doing this for 23 years, I found so far that it's the best pen to sign on resin and wood. So if you do like putting your signature on the bottom like I do, then that's the pen that I use. The size of this piece, it was 5 inches at its thickest dimension and 5.5 inches tall, and very, very cool. One thing that is going to be interesting to see people's opinions on is these thick lines. I don't mind them at all. There are some on here that are a little thinner. Here's right here. Hopefully the camera will be able to pick that up. You can maybe see where I left it kind of natural. It was a little hard to see initially when I had it roughed out, but of course after things are polished you can kind of see all the faults. So that was another reason why I put the plastic all around this, just to catch those little areas that maybe I had missed. Inside, by no stretch of the imagination, is perfect, that's for sure. You can feel some ridges in there, but it's on the inside and I don't really care, to be quite honest with you. I think the opening here ended up being 1 1/8 inches, something like that. But I really think that using the gold was the way to go, and I think using the gold on the other vase that we did would have been the way to go as well. The white, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with it, but I was looking for that contrast in color, and this is exactly what I was looking for. All right, so we are coming up on 50,000 subs. Wow, thank you so much. It's been, again, a very busy week, 200-300 subs a day. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for subscribing. Of course, if you haven't, please do so. So that means that we're going to have to do some sort of giveaway here, either this coming week or next week. It's actually early. It's only Wednesday, but my daughter is graduating from dental hygiene. So my wife and I are going to go up for the ceremony. So that's why, I'm kind of a little early, but I think that by the time this airs, I'll probably be at 50,000. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And congratulations to our daughter, Carrie, for graduating dental hygiene through the COVID times. It hasn't been easy for anybody going to school. So she passed with flying colors, and her mother and I are very, very proud of her. All right, well, that's it. Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think about this beautiful little holoform. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that as well. All right, well, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget that bell, and please share with your friends. See you next week.